What's something you can swear you saw but no one is believing you? Not safe for work. Posted 1 day ago. Viewer discretion is advised. Please do like, share, and subscribe. When I was living with my parents, our small dog jumped straight up onto the kitchen counter. It was super high, but he made it. He only did it once, and I witnessed it, but my family calls BS every time I say it really happened. When we were 10 years old, all of my cousins and siblings were playing hide and seek in the dark in the middle of a park. When someone gets found, you join the seeker to look for people, but you can't tell them where they are. I was the seeker, and I just found one of my cousins, so we were walking around and looking for the rest. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone that looked exactly like my brother run past us at inhuman speed. I turned to look at my cousin, and he had admitted that he saw the same thing. We found my brother later in the round, but he was at the other side of the park. Nobody believes either of us, but both of us still remember it. On the bike path, a man riding a beach cruiser, one-handed, no shirt, but wearing a huge sombrero, carrying a fawn cradled in his other arm. I live in a rural community in Canada. My sister came to see me once and swore up and down that she saw a zebra grazing in the fields. I made fun of her for a couple of years about how the zebra roamed the North Pole and how Santa has zebra instead of reindeer. She was really starting to doubt herself, but stuck to her guns. Well, I was driving one day and lo and behold, a fucking zebra grazing in the field. Turns out a zoo sometimes let them roam around there. When I told my sister, she felt vindicated. 6 years ago, I went through 10 surgeries for a badly broken leg. During one of the surgeries early on, I have distinct memories of waking up and hearing, seeing, and smelling several minutes of the surgery. I also remember a nurse looking me in the eye and then telling someone I was awake. I then passed back out, presumably due to more anesthesia. No one believes me that this happened. I'm now terribly afraid of surgery and hope I never have to enter another operating room. I'm 31 female from Northern Ireland, and this happened about 10 years ago. As I walked my dog, I suddenly felt like I was being watched. I looked around and quickly noticed a gray wolf slowly walking through the field I was beside, staring right at me with a mangled rabbit in its mouth. We were both walking in the same general direction. It looked huge, around 5 feet or so. It stared in such a predatory way, I was terrified that it was going to come for us. It was about 15 meters away, with a pretty pathetic fence between us, and we both just stood there frozen for about 10 seconds, staring at each other. Eventually, I picked up my small dog and backed away while watching it. I didn't know what the hell to do. When it was nearly out of sight and still hadn't moved, I turned and ran. I told my dad, who didn't seem to believe me, but said I should call animal welfare, and they didn't take it seriously at all. I never heard back from them. We don't have wolves here, so I have no idea what the heck happened. I Google it every few years and did read something about people managing to get wolves as pets and then releasing them when they get too big to keep or something, so I wonder if that's what happened. But I always see a look of worried disbelief when I tell someone. Kept telling my mom and sister I was seeing UFOs. Kept happening really regularly and frequently. Eventually I got them all to come outside because it was about time for one to show up, and it did. It was a stealth bomber being test flown long before the public announcement about them went out or any pics were leaked. Blew all of our minds. I stayed over at a church friend's house when I was 8-ish. He said he had a little sister, but my parents and I never saw her at church or anything. My mom said it was probably imaginary. That night, I walked in the wrong room and saw a teenage girl in a crib, dressed like a baby. I told my mom, I told my friends, I told whoever I could, but no one believed me. A few years back, I saw a capybara in my front yard in Alabama. No one believed me because by the time I came back with my phone, he was gone. The best I got was I guess it might have been a capybara, but a local man was found to have his own exotic animal collection less than 3 miles away. Other animals I saw in that yard, an emu and 2 bison. I must have lived pretty close to that dude's land. Myself, from several feet away, I was very, very tired, and I was walking up the steps at my house. I remember watching myself from an angle that wouldn't have been possible, but I remember it as clear as day. I saw a dude standing next to my truck with an unnaturally wide smile. I was on Highway 49 East, right outside Greenwood, MS. I heard hail hit my truck a few times, so I pulled over expecting a tornado. I was grabbing my backpack, getting ready to bail out for the ditch. I turned back to the driver's side window to check my mirror, and this guy was just standing there, smiling. It scared me so bad I just slammed the truck and drive and got out of there. I have clear and distinct memories from when I was still in diapers and a crib. No one in my family believed me until I described the exact layout of my room at the time, bed and dressers included. We don't have any photos of this room, so this isn't a false memory situation like my brother said. I even described a time my mom gave me cough medicine in a Mickey Mouse spoon from before I could even talk. It's weird because my short-term memory is trash, but my long-term memory is absolutely unreal. I've never mentioned this before to anyone. Seen Epcot in Orlando on the brick walkway between a walk-through part with stores and such on either side and the part leading up to the land. Date, June 2008. I was with my pregnant wife. Huge storm rolls in, black clouds, about to pour, when there was this unearthly deafening sound and bright light exploded. I opened my eyes and I was standing 30 feet or more away, back under the covered walkway, unharmed. My wife said I'd been standing right beside her, then I wasn't. It was too far to have run in the brief second of the explosion. I assume a lightning strike. Swear this happened as well as I could tell it. I saw my uncle fall from the roof as he was escaping a house fire. He was able to get inside the car and take off, but not before the house toppled over on top of the house. After a few minutes, he appeared out of the smoke, limping away. I distinctly remember running back to my house right next door to tell my mom about what had just happened. We go outside and nothing. No fire, no smashed car, no house falling over. I don't know WTF 5-year-old me was smoking, but I had the hardest time processing what had just happened or not happened. My mom was so angry with me for coming up with such an awful lie about her little brother. Till this day, 27-year-old now, I can't explain what, why, or how I saw what I saw, but I very much remember terrifying feeling I felt during and afterwards. Mom thinks I must have fallen asleep playing outside and woke up from a nightmare and panicked, but whatever it was, it felt too real. Not something I saw, something I felt and heard. I was struggling to sleep one night, lying in bed feeling wired and irritable when I felt pressure lift from the bed on my partner's side. I assumed he'd got up to go to the bathroom. I was facing the opposite way, so I didn't see him do this. A few minutes go by, and I hear him come back into the room and feel him get back in bed. Nothing strange about that. Lying there still frustrated, the same thing happens again. A lift of pressure, some rustling sounds like a person trying to navigate a dark room, an absence of sound for a few moments, and then the sensation of weight on the bed again. Still not thinking much of it, because it wasn't an obvious cause for concern. I continue trying to fall asleep. Then it happens again, and again, and again. I wasn't too into the idea of asking him if he was okay, as we had a ridiculous argument that night, and I was pretty pissed off with him, so I just ignored it. But then it sounded like he had got up and was simply pacing around the room clumsily. I could hear things on the shelves being touched and slightly moved, and hands gently brushing against walls, and then I felt the bed suddenly dip in a concentrated spot of the mattress as though he had stood on it. This carries on for I don't know how long, rustling, pressure on the bed, and so on until I snap. I sit bolt upright, turn around and say, "What the hell are you doing?" to see my partner waking up from a very deep sleep and looking confused. I told him what had happened, and he said he'd been asleep next to me the whole time, which was pretty obvious to see him in his very sleepy state. Plus, he would have had mere seconds to jump into bed without me noticing in the time it took me to sit up and turn around. I somehow fell asleep that night, feeling confused and as though eyes were on me. And in a typical cheesy haunted house fashion, I get a call from my mom the next morning telling me my uncle had died the night before. My betta fish disappeared out of a covered tank and then reappeared in front of my eyes. If you can imagine, this tank is clear plastic on all sides, including the bottom. There's nowhere to hide when it's empty. The only thing not transparent is the metal lid. Betta fish are known to hide, so I didn't worry about not seeing him for a couple of days. But on day 3 I got worried, so I took the heater and filter out, checked the inside of the filter, took the plants out, took the hides out, no fish. Nothing in the tank but water and glass rocks now. so I started scooping the rocks out, thinking he may have gotten trapped under there and died. Pretty soon, I'm staring at a tank with nothing but water in it, no fish. I figure there's no way he's still alive, so I start scooping the water out. It's about 3/4 full when suddenly my fish does one of those fishy slow turns in the dead center of the tank. There he was. It wasn't like I turned away and then back and my fish was there. No, I was staring at the tank, and I quite literally saw him swim back into existence. 1 second he wasn't there, the next he was. I moved him to a smaller bowl for a few days to keep an eye on him, covered the top with perforated plastic wrap to ensure no jumping. He disappeared from the bowl a couple of days later and never came back. Have owned several betta fish, and I can honestly say no other fish has ever dimension hopped out of a tank since. I have very vivid memories of my great-grandfather. I distinctly remember which room he lay in for months while being cared for by his family and what the layout of the room was like. I also have a memory of playing with him and him talking to me while I was being fully aware that he had cancer in the latest stages and understood that he would probably die soon. Thing is, I only ever met him once in person, and I was only 4 months old. My family has pointed out that I knew facts about his appearance that I could not possibly have known because there are close to no pictures of him, like a big scar he had across his chest from an operation. I have no other memories from my early childhood. In fact, my memory about that time is so bad I don't even correctly recall things from my time in kindergarten. When I was a kid, I ate some of my grandmother's heart medication and nearly died, was rushed to the hospital to have my stomach pumped, and I have a memory of looking down at myself on the hospital bed with my mom and hospital staff around me. It still is one of the only things I've had happen that I cannot explain, and no one I've told this story to believes me at all. Even my super religious aunt said it was my imagination. Ball lightning. There was a glowing white ball in the sky, like nothing I've ever seen. It flew around, maneuvered a bit. I turned my head to reach for my camera. When I looked back, it immediately went behind a cloud and disappeared. There was no lightning that day. The weather was rather fair and nice. It lasted for about a minute. It was really interesting. When I was a kid, I remember seeing a lady's face in a doorway grinning at me with what I assumed to be something brown covering her entire face and teeth. I would see her several times until we moved away when I was 5. Obviously, my family didn't see her, but my mom got worried when I told her that I saw the lady from the kiosk, which is what I called the lady after I dreamt of her falling down a flight of stairs in a small store not far from our house. And I shit you not, my mom told me a few months ago that in the same store I was dreaming of, a woman had fallen down a flight of stairs and had her face torn on the way down, apparently being covered in dried blood when she was found. Hence my description of her. Imagine the look on my face when I heard that, LMAO. Also, apparently I kept talking to my mom about a man in the wall back then. I don't remember seeing a man in the wall, but I do remember talking about him. In summer camp as a kid, went to the bathroom late at night. To get there, you had to go up this big hill covered with rocks, almost like a gravel driveway. So I go up there, and first thing I see on the floor is a giant smooshed piece of poop with a human footprint in the middle, toes and all. I couldn't stop laughing as I went to the bathroom and went back to the cabin. None of the other kids believed me when I told them, and it was gone the next day. LMAO. Was playing with my cousin and a friend of ours outside. We were riding our bikes and had a bunch of fun, but couldn't explore that far from where I live, since we were like 7 or 8 years old. As we were cheerfully cycling down a long road behind a parking garage near my apartment, I started to slow down as I was getting tired of it. Both of them were continuing to cycle down the road as they haven't noticed me being left behind yet. You have to understand that the location of the road was right in between the parking garage with 2 floors and a fence which had only rails on either side and was usually deserted. So once I stopped cycling, I could only turn tail or follow the road ahead. After reaching my limit, I simply stopped my bike midway after a while and tried to catch some breath. While doing so, something caught my eye on the back stairs of the parking garage. I tried to get closer to check out what it was out of curiosity, but boy, was that a mistake. I spotted a man who seemed to kneel down behind a wall of the back stairs. Didn't seem suspicious at first. However, after a closer look, I saw what seemed like a knife covered in blood. My body froze, and all I could feel was fear that went through my body, which felt like it lasted for minutes. The man just started to catch on with me standing on the road and began to slowly stand up and face my direction. I was somehow able to get my brain back to process and bolted down the street with any power I had left in me. After passing both my cousin and friend, as well as leaving a big distance to where I spotted him, I started to break down in tears and explaining what happened. No one would believe me, since they went back to check and found nothing strange. Got so traumatized from it that I avoided the road until my mid-teens. TLDR, a man with a knife covered in blood behind a parking garage while cycling as a kid, and no one would believe. When I was a kid, between the ages of 4 and 8, I would see a guy in my house. He would stand in the same spot, in the same room looking at me, and my family couldn't see him. I'd cry and scream and would refuse to go near him, but nobody else ever saw him. I'm someone who believes in logic and the laws of the universe, so this really throws me off. I struggle to believe it myself, but I vividly remember this person, this ghost if you wish. Even now, I remember his face. I explained this to someone the other day, and I felt so silly. I sounded like I was making it up.